Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
Obviously, you're very disappointed after the Brentford game. So what's been the focus this week in terms of putting right the things you were disappointed with?
Yeah, good training week for us this week. I think a lot of returning to basics, fundamentals of our performance weren't quite right against Brentford. And I think basically our mentality to defend our goal wasn't there. When you concede 4 goals in any game, there's issues. You look back at those goals individually, it was not the cohesive defending that we've been used to. Really, this season we've been okay defensively. The last 2 games obviously conceded 7 goals, so that's something we've needed to reflect on, we've worked on, and hopefully that will show.
Often you've talked about shutting out the noise, the outside noise, which perhaps comes after a defeat like that. I wonder, do you put pressure on yourself, though, or do you feel pressure from elsewhere in the club when you've had a result like that and you know you need to improve?
You can never escape pressure. I think it's always there at a club of this size. But I think how you interpret that and handle that is always individual. For me, I always surround myself with my work. Whether we win, lose or draw, it doesn't really change. The focus of the work might change and what we need to do might change, but the work ethic and the standards that I demand of myself is always there. And of course, when you don't perform in the way that you want, you're seeking solutions and you're seeking a better way of working. So always in that pursuit of that, again, regardless of results. So I think you're aware of conversations and topics and themes and what people may be saying, but I certainly don't indulge myself in absorbing any of it.
And obviously the head coach becomes the focus all the time. It was interesting, something that Gary O'Neill said after the Wolves game at the weekend, just talking about how, he knows the results from last season were good, or many of them were, but at the same time, he still has pressure on him this season, but he knows that he's a better coach now in his own mind than he was last season, because he's improving all the time. So it's often sort of, there's much more to it, isn't it, than just the coach, but that's always where the focus is.
Yeah, I think you understand that in the position that we're in. There's a lot of scrutiny, there's a lot of opinion. I understand that. I take criticism, and it's part of the job. So I've got no issue with it. And in some respects, I encourage it, because if it keeps it away from the players, for me, that's absolutely crucial, because they're the ones that have to perform on the pitch, and they need to perform in the best environment we can create. So I think the only way to respond to that is to work harder, is to work smarter, and to try and get positive results.
Obviously, another big blow for you with Callum Wilson's latest setback, bearing in mind his injury history. It must be very, very difficult for him. He's released a statement, hasn't he? And you can tell, he's quite emotional about it. How do you handle that situation? Because, he's obviously desperate to play. You're desperate to have him. So how do you move on from here to get him right?
Yeah, I really feel for Callum, because we see the work and the dedication, the professionalism that he's shown, not just in the recovery from this injury, but throughout his career, really. For me, he's an inspirational player, and I think when you're in these moments for him, you have to understand how difficult this season has been for him. He's had a couple of setbacks when he's looked like he's so close to training and playing regularly and building that resilience that his body needs to perform at this level. He has not cut corners. He's gone through a vigorous process to try and keep himself fit. And I'm talking about taking himself away from his family for long periods of time, to dedicate himself to no distractions, to seeking the best specialist opinions in the world that he sometimes has paid for himself. So when you go to that level of dedication to give yourself the best chance to perform, and when you see him not get the end result this time, I feel really sad for him. But I back him to come back again and have the mental resilience that he's going to need to fight again and fight hard, because we know his qualities and we're desperate to see him play again in a Newcastle shirt and score goals.
As far as Leicester are concerned at the weekend, I guess another different kind of test for you again. How much more difficult is it when a relatively new manager has come in and perhaps has changed things around a bit? How much more difficult is it then to prepare for a match, which is a match that you're obviously desperate to win?
Yeah, I think it brings a couple of challenges, but nothing that we haven't experienced before. I think Ruud's come in and he's definitely made tweaks. He's definitely showed how he wants the team to play. So we will anticipate a slightly different Leicester than maybe it would have been a few weeks ago. But we're ready for that, and we respect them, we respect Ruud and the work that he's done, but we back ourselves as well, and we know the importance of this game. We're back at home. We want to create a really good feeling. We know after the last result we need a reaction.
Thank you.
Keith?
Hi, Eddie.
Hi.
Just listening to you there on Callum, obviously a huge blow for him because it's a succession of injuries. It almost feels, sort of from the outside looking in, that as much as it's a physical thing, this is going to be a real mental thing for him to get over as well. And it sounds as though, is he doing anything different, anything extra to try and get past all this? Just reading his comment as well, his statement where he said it's been an emotional roller coaster for me. It sounds like it's a really difficult time for him mentally as much as anything else.
Yeah, I think when you care as much as Callum does, and he cares about himself, of course, but he cares about the team and the club and his teammates. He's desperate to perform and he's desperate to contribute. And when you're not able to do that because of your body, that's a very emotional thing. And he's been outwardly emotional to me. So I've seen the pain and the hurt that this moment's given him. But I think that just fuels him. I just think that gives him extra motivation to try and come back and to try and contribute in the way that he wants to, because he's such an important player for us. We've missed him massively.
And I guess a delicate situation for himself in terms of his future with his contract up at the end of the season as well. I guess there's a danger that we might not see too much of him between now and then. His future is undoubtedly be up in the air. Yeah,
I think that's a bit further down the road. I think the most important thing currently is that he tries to get himself in the best condition possible to try and play. The injury's not the long term. It's a sort of roughly around an 8-week injury, we think. So all being well, he will be back. And then that'll be a crucial period for him. But I don't think he has to think about his future. I think that's a step beyond. It's just about the short term, trying to deal with the initial injury itself and then fighting back, which I know he will.
And in that position, centre forward, you've obviously just got the two out and out centre forwards in the shape of Callum and Alex. Does that concern you a bit? Because Alex at times this season hasn't been the most durable either. Are you worried that you're perhaps going to run out of options there as the season progresses?
Obviously Callum's injury is a blow in the respect of our strength in depth in that position, but I think Alex at the moment, touch wood, is fit and is looking good, scoring goals, playing well. We're doing a lot of work with Will Asula behind the scenes, and he's progressing nicely, so I'd have no hesitation in playing him as well. So I think we have two, and then we have a variety of options behind that, which hopefully we won't get to use.
I know you won't want to linger on last weekend too much and you'll want to have parked that and moved on, but just a couple of things that the players have said. Obviously Bruno after the match said that the second half was a mess, and then we spoke to Anthony Gordon last night, who said teams are finding it all right, certain teams are finding it all right to play against us. Now while that's very honest, and I think the supporters will appreciate that, you will as well, it must be difficult to hear.
Yeah, but you can't hide what we've delivered. I think we try to be very honest with ourselves and open. Don't try and cover up what we've delivered. The second half against Brentford, the last half an hour against West Ham, in losing situations wasn't a great response. I think the manner of goals that we conceded against Brentford wasn't good enough. But we accept responsibility for that, and you can't, unfortunately, affect the past. You can only affect the future. We have to be harder to play against. We have to be better defensively. The frustrating thing is when we score goals, we seem to be conceding them. We look better as an attacking unit against Brentford and Liverpool in our last two games than we did the previous group. So it's just trying to get all systems firing together.
I know you've said previously that January will be a difficult window. It is every year, but due to finances. Does a combination of the inconsistent performances, the fact that there's not been too many additions that come in and strengthen the starting 11 the last couple of windows, and the injury now to Callum, does that make the January transfer window a window where you need to try and do something, try and add?
I don't think those things affect our ability to trade. In previous seasons that would be the case, because I think you would react to what the team's delivering or an injury situation. But I think now with the trading model as it is, you're much less reactive. It's what you can do, not what you want to do. I keep saying the same thing about January. I wouldn't expect us to be in a position to be too active in the market as we currently stand. Now things can change. If we trade players, of course that's different. But if we don't trade players, I would expect us to be quiet.
Thanks, Keith. Andy?
Well, Neddy, I appreciate when you came in, obviously, Newcastle were in relegation trouble. Given the inconsistency and trying to solve the inconsistency, is this up there with one of the toughest tests so far of Newcastle career?
I think every season you have difficult spells within it. I don't know if it's difficult to grade them, but of course when you're not winning consistently and you're not in your best rhythm, I'm going to say to you it's difficult, and you've got to try and find solutions, as I've said before, and we're trying to do that. We've definitely this week spent a lot of time seeing what tweaks we can make and how we can improve different functions of the team. But that never stops. That's a continuing process for us. But certainly a difficult week for us to navigate through, digest the performance that we delivered. But then it's always about being positive. Very quickly you have to turn it around and then look, right, okay, we've got a game to play and we've got a big week coming up because we've got another midweek game and a really important competition. So very quickly there could be a lot of positive as well. So you can never forget that. So we're in that midst of being very honest with ourselves and reflective, but then being very positive about what's to come.
Keith touched upon it there, what Anthony was saying last night about how teams are finding it all right to play against Newcastle, whereas a year or two ago, Newcastle were horrible to play against in the nicest possible way. There was no side in the Premier League who enjoyed it. How do you get Newcastle playing to that style again, to that, dare I say, nasty edge once again?
I think it's a difficult thing to chase, because I think that a lot of that comes down to the individual players. So that team that we had in the Champions League qualification season, we can't recreate that team. You can't go back. The characteristics of the players made the team. We were horrible to play against. We had that nasty streak within us, but I can't necessarily pass that on to the players we have now. Different characters, different personalities. Some of them can't play that way. So we have to be better in a different way. So if we're not going to be that nasty team, we have to be much better in different phases of our play. And I think there's really positive signs in some aspects, because I don't think it's all negative. And even the Brentford game, there was some positive stuff in there. And definitely the third goal changed the direction of the game. We didn't respond well to it. Probably the manner of it hurt us psychologically. Didn't respond well enough. Something we'll have to look at. But there were some positives in there too.
I know you say you kind of work even harder when it comes down to a situation like this, but obviously there's talk out there of attitude and things like that. How much does that kind of hurt you personally? How much does that sting personally when words like attitude are thrown around?
Well, it does, yeah, because I think what I want to see is a reflection of our work on the pitch and our attitude to how we prepare and train the team. So I think when you're coaching and when you're responsible for what you see, you want to see not a reflection of me, because if it's a reflection of my playing ability, I wouldn't want to see that, but a reflection of my mental qualities. And I think by and large we've seen that through my time here. I think we've seen a team that's been honest, hardworking, and I still think we're hardworking. Look at our physical stats week in, week out. We're one of the best teams in the Premier League physically. To deliver that, your attitude has to be good. Now, I know there's been some isolated incidents of body language not being to what we want it to be. We've tried to deal with that. We've tried to work on that. And we'll continue to do that with the players concerned.
Just finally, how did Newcastle stand team news-wise this week? And the likes of Joe Willock, Lewis Smiley, how are they looking ahead of Leicester?
Joe Willock, we haven't seen train yet, but is making good progress. Louis Miley's come through a couple of really good games for his continued return, and he's looking really good, so I'm pleased with him. So yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
No problem.
Jerry?
Morning, Eddie.
Hi.
Transfer speculation always spikes before a window, of course, and you'll be aware that there's a lot going on at the minute, internationally as well. As far as you're concerned, should Sandro Tonali, given your long-term investment in him, still be here at the end of January?
Certainly hope so. Got no plans on losing Sandro. I laugh because that just seems out of the blue for me. Sandro's a vital part of what we're doing. Our investment in him was long term. I've been really pleased with him personally. We've built up a strong relationship. He's improving in all aspects of his play, naturally through the games that he's playing. The ban was difficult because he's only training, and he's not, I say only training. Of course, we're doing big pitch work in there, but he's not learning from the games. The games are the biggest teacher, I think. So I think now he's in a position where he's getting both, and I think we're seeing an improvement in all aspects of his play.
This word consistency has been mentioned half a dozen times already. Is there anywhere on the field in particular you need to make a change to get that consistency back that would lift you back into the top half of the table? Is it defence, for example? You mentioned characters have changed over the last year or so. Is it defence, midfield, somewhere else?
No, I think when you're using the word consistency, and we're searching for a sort of a rhythm in our play that is there week in, week out. I don't think it's one aspect. I think it comes down to the mental side of the game more than the tactical or the technical delivery. I think even within games, we've had really high moments and then some disappointing moments. I think back to several games where we've conceded out of nothing. We're not under pressure in the game. Even Brentford game, for the away team, we're under no pressure. And we concede a goal, and we're 1-0 down very early in the match, and that changes the dynamics of how we think. So it's cutting out those sort of individual mistakes that have crept into our game in the last two games defensively, because I don't think it's a structural problem. And then, of course, confidence builds from that, and that's something that we need to protect at all times.
Finally, from me, we saw Sven Botman training the other day. Any news on him? How's he doing?
He's been training for a while. I don't think it's an isolated incident. He's been training consistently now for around 4 weeks. But that was the plan. So we are taking, obviously, medical advice and trying to follow the right protocols for the injuries that he's had. The injury that he's had, to try and make sure that we give him the best chance to stay fit. So I think the plan is late December, very early January at the earliest, that he will be available for their first team.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Jerry. Damien?
I think there seemed to be some suggestion that Nick Pope was carrying a little knock. Is he okay?
Yeah, he's carried a knee injury this week. Initially, we thought it was nothing. So I think he's seeking some specialist opinion today, and then we'll see if he's available for tomorrow.
Just going back to Sandro, obviously there was a speculation in the week which he's come out and denied. Do you sort of have to prepare yourself for another month of that speculation? And if so, given the impact that had in the summer, are you concerned at the effect it could have on your players again?
Yeah, I don't think from my side we want or encourage any speculation on any of our players leaving. I don't think it helps us in any way. I don't think it helps the players, because it just can only distract you, take you away from what you need to concentrate on. Certainly, I don't encourage it. I don't see that being a big issue for us. We want to keep our squad together. Ideally, we'd want to add the other way. That might not be possible, but we certainly don't want to be losing our best players.
Thanks, Tim. Go to Luke and then Lee Ryder.
You sounded more despondent. Probably, I think most supporters picked up on it. The tone of your voice, your post-match interviews. How quickly do you shake that off, and are you feeling despondent?
I'm certainly not despondent. I can probably honestly say after the Brentford game, I was very disappointed. All those emotions attached to that, sad, whatever you want to call it, because I think we have standards to hit and demands to match, most importantly from ourselves, and we didn't hit those levels. So, of course, when you don't deliver what you want to deliver, you're sad, you're disappointed. But that very quickly turns to, right, what can we do? Almost within seconds, to be honest. You can't dwell in that moment. You have to go, right, you have to find us a positive way forward. So what's that going to be? How are we going to work differently? What can we improve? What can we change? How can we affect the players? So all those decisions and actions have been taken this week, and hopefully we see that reflected in our performance against Leicester. But certainly no negative emotions, because you can't hold them for any length of time. Been in the game long enough to know they're only around the corner. Disappointments, it's the easiest thing to suffer in football. The hardest thing is for long-term success and consistent results. But you're always working towards that, so that's what we've done this week.
What sort of support, communication have you received internally from those above you during this spell?
I don't really seek it, to be honest. Look, I've never been that type of person. I'm not, I don't know if the right word, needy, or seeking assurances or looking above me going, let me engage in conversations to see how the land lies. That's not me. My work is always with the players, and that's my main focus, is to try and affect them positively. My future will be dictated by the results on the pitch, not by me seeking anything.
Just finally, is confidence a problem? I mean, you're speaking very well. Is confidence becoming a problem with the players?
I'm hesitating because that's difficult for me to answer. I'm not playing. I'm seeing and preparing the team, but I'm not having their emotions on the pitch. I don't think so currently, but of course, the longer that we don't play in the way that we want to or get results, that may start to be an issue. I certainly would ask everybody connected with Newcastle that doesn't become an issue at home, because our home form has always been the bedrock of our success here, and the players love playing at home, love playing in the environment, and I know we have a duty to keep that environment ourselves by body language, attitude, work rate, all those things that the supporters will feed off. So that's our job. But that environment at home is fundamental to our success. We have to keep that positive, and that's down to us.
Thanks, Luke. Lee?
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
You've obviously had some famous wins at Newcastle. Perhaps some of the not forgotten wins are in the history books, though. Your first win against Burnley, you won 1-0, and I remember a game at Leeds, you went and won 1-0, and there were turning points. Is that the sort of thing you're looking for in this game against Leicester?
Well, if it means we win this game and go on a winning run, then we look at it in hindsight as a turning point, then yeah, absolutely. I think the difficulty in those moments, you don't know. Didn't know at Leeds that was going to be a turning point for us. I sort of felt the Burnley game was a big moment because we just needed to win. However we did it, we just needed to win. The Leeds game, now we look back and go, well, that was a massive win for us, because I think it just gave us belief again. It gave us, especially after what had happened before, because I think we'd just travelled to Saudi, if my memory's right, and there felt a real togetherness in the group that we're going to do this. Now, we're in a different moment now, in a different season, different feelings. But we have a big week to come. We're under no illusions. This game, the Brentford game at home, they're massive games for us. They can elevate us and change our season positively. So yeah, if that means a turning point, we'll take anything that comes.
And it's easy to sometimes get sort of pulled down by the doom and gloom, but the run that you've been on includes 2 draws, and it's not like you had any hammerings in games. So is it easy to remind the players of what you've had not that long ago? Nottingham Forest wasn't that long ago, for example.
Yeah, you're right, but the modern day game is based on really the last result or the last couple of results, and we're sort of aware of that. I think in the last group of games, you're absolutely right. For me, the Liverpool game was a brilliant example of what we can be. Yes, we didn't win the game, but our first half performance in particular was standout, a brilliant performance. So it's not, that's one game away. That's so close. But the frustration for us is that we showed that version of ourselves that day, and then the version that we showed against Brentford. So we're looking for our best version of ourselves all the time, consistently. The players want the same thing, and it's up to us to deliver it.
Just if there are any goalkeeping issues, you've got a very strong goalkeepers brigade here, so I guess that wouldn't be an issue if Nick is going to be missing. Yeah,
we do. We have a very strong unit. We have a very good, experienced team of goalkeepers. If you look at the experience behind Nick, which is a great thing for us to utilise. So let's see what happens with Nick today. But yeah, we back all the goalkeepers we have.
Okay, we've got to Jordan, Scott, and then Craig.
Hi Eddie. The word under pressure often come about. Sorry, I've totally lost my train of thought. I was unexpected. Can you come back with us?
Yeah, Scott.
Hi Eddie. Eddie, you talk about January there, and we kind of all know the difficulties that there are. Clearly, the game changer in that situation is to sell a big name player. Now, if not in January, in the summer. Have you had internally as a recruitment team conversations about that option, and where do you stand on it? Because clearly losing a big player has massive ramifications in terms of trying to replace them, and yet where Newcastle are, it potentially is the only way you can bring in 3, 4, 5 players to really change the squad.
If only it was that easy. I don't think there's a wish or a want from anyone to sell our best players. I get the question and I understand the train of thought, but there's so much more that goes into it than the simple decision that you've presented. We're desperate to take the team forward positively and not step back in any way. But the best players we have, they're like gold dust. I've said that many times. They're difficult to find. You're not going to pick them up off the street. When you have them, you've got to cherish them and really care for them and try to make the environment as strong as you can so they want to stay as part of that. So, yeah, that's sort of a mixed answer from me, but it's not as easy as that.
And just one on Willisula, who you kind of see is kind of getting there. What have you felt? And I know you probably want to go into real specifics, but what have you felt you've needed to work on with him over these last 3-4 months? What when he came in, what were you seeing that you didn't feel ready to put him in straight away that needed to improve, change, whatever?
I just think it's a huge jump for him in every way. Naturally, I've been really, really impressed by him. So his attitude to learning is top. He's there with a variety of coaches after training every day, working on different aspects of his game, and I think that's the thing. There's not one thing for Will. It's right. If you fix this or improve this, then it's just a time. It's time to improve all aspects of his game, his understanding. You don't suddenly just land and become a Premier League striker. You have to work towards that as a young player. He's making great strides. I've been really impressed with him. I think we're sort of now working with him a few months. He's readier than he's ever been. And obviously with Callum's injury now, he's going to have to step up. He's going to have to grab any opportunity that comes his way. He has all the attributes. I'm sure every supporter that's watched him play in the brief times that he's played, he's big, he's quick, very quick. He's strong. There's just a refinement, and the only thing that can sort of bring that is time. But he's certainly getting there.
Okay, we're up against time a little bit, so we might need to nudge it down to single questions, if that's okay. We'll go to Jordan, Craig, and then to Dominic.
Yeah, apologies. The trail of what I was trying to get is the words under pressure often get banned about a result on the way that everyone would like. Do you feel under pressure?
I think I always feel under pressure, and I'm not trying to be clever with my answer. But genuinely, I always feel under pressure in different ways, depending on results, under pressure to keep winning, under pressure to win if you're not winning, under pressure to deliver for the players, under pressure to work in the right way, to be a role model for all the people of Newcastle. So I always feel under pressure. I don't feel negatively under pressure to sort of affect my mood or my emotions. I try very hard to keep them under control, to be the best person I can be for the players when they need me.
Thanks, Jordan. Craig?
Yeah, one question, I best make it a good one. It's a bigger picture question. Now, a lot of things go into the performance of the professional footballer. There's the isolation of what you guys do at the training ground, of course, but beyond that, I think there's an acceptance now that the project here, at least in the short term, has slowed and has changed direction, perhaps to what we thought it was 18 months ago. Does that permeate the dressing room? And if so, how do you deal with that with regard to your players?
That's a good question. That's probably more than one question in your question. How do I answer that? Yeah, I think players are very astute human beings. I always say players feel everything at a football club. They're the most perceptive people because they're on the front line. They're the ones delivering for us. So whatever's going on at a football club, I think they're absorbing it. And I think naturally, like we've said many times, PSR has had an effect on the football club, though we haven't been able to strive and reach as quickly as we wanted to initially. And that's been halted somewhat in various ways. I think, of course, they felt that. They've been aware of that. I think the challenge for me is for that not to affect performances, to affect mood, to affect the belonging to the football club. I'd say that's easier maybe in some cases than others, depending on the player's situation. But I will say fundamentally, I think when you look at the squad, they're all committed to the club. They all want to do well. I don't think there's any other thought in the players' minds, and they know the responsibility on their shoulders. And together, hopefully, we can turn the corner.
Thanks, Craig. Dominic?
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
I'll just keep things simple, but Callum Wilson, you spoke about the vigorous process to get him fit and to keep him fit. Just how did his injury come about, and is it something that could occur again in the future?
His injury came on Saturday against Brentford, very, very late in the game. It was an innocuous moment. There wasn't a big moment. I think he just felt discomfort in his hamstring. I can't remember which one. Of course, there's a chance that can happen again, because I'd say the same to any player of any injury at any time. They can happen, and they can strike sometimes without reason. But yeah, he did it in the game, and of course I've tried to manage his minutes sensibly on the pitch, knowing how important he is. But sometimes these things happen, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Thanks, Tom. Kieran?
Morning. We've seen how many goals Callum has scored for the club. How difficult is it to find a player like that in the market when you're under restrictions?
I don't like using the word impossible, because I don't believe in that. But as close as you can get to it, because Callum's got the experience, the know-how, all the things that you need to deliver that. He would be one of the few people that can, that's available to us. So yeah, it's a big blow, but as I say, I've seen this many times, where you get an injury to someone, and I'm trying to put a positive spin on this, and it opens up a door for someone else in whatever capacity. So whether that's for Willisula or for someone else to step forward and to showcase their talents, then so be it. And Callum will work his way back to fitness.
Thanks, Kieran. Simon, to finish us off.
Hey,
Hi, Simon.
if players believe that the project is slowing and they can't get to the very top of this club, is it harder to keep them, and is it harder to recruit from that position?
Yeah, I'd say it's being honest, that would be a challenge for us. But again, depending on the player's situation and his career objectives and his age, etc., a lot goes into it. Of course, if we feel we're able to develop quicker, that will suit the player's needs and wants. But it's not just what the player needs and wants, it's what we need and want. It's what the club, who hold his registration in his contract, need and want, most importantly. And as I said, I've had no player knock on my door say they want to leave. I think we've got a good group of players that want success and that are together in that pursuit.